The moment I knew my marriage was over came at a backyard barbecue on a Tuesday night in September. Not during some dramatic confrontation or tearful confession, but while I stood next to a smoking grill, holding a beer that had gone warm in my hand, listening to my wife tell her friends something that made my stomach drop like a stone. "Maybe I married too young," Marta said, her voice carrying that practiced laugh she used when she wanted to sound casual about something that wasn't casual at all. "You know how it is. Sometimes you make decisions before you really know who you are." I turned the burgers, pretending I hadn't heard. The meat sizzled and popped, sending up little clouds of smoke that stung my eyes. Or maybe that was something else entirely. "Never too late to fix a mistake," I said, loud enough for the whole group to hear. The conversation stopped. Jennifer Morrison, our neighbor, nearly choked on her wine. Marta's best friend Tanya raised her eyebrows and gave me a look that could have frozen boiling water, but it was Marta's expression that really got to me. Not embarrassed, not apologetic, just annoyed that I'd interrupted her little performance. "That's not what I meant, David," she said, her voice tight with the kind of control she used in her marketing presentations. "Sure it wasn't." I flipped another burger, watching the flames lick up around the edges. Just making conversation. And that, I thought to myself, was the moment I became a ghost at my own party. "My name is David Mitchell, and I've been fixing cars for the better part of 30 years. Started as a kid in my dad's garage, worked my way up to owning my own auto body shop on the south side of town. It's honest work, the kind where you can see what you've accomplished at the end of the day. Unlike some people's jobs, where success is measured in PowerPoint slides and quarterly reports. I met Marta 22 years ago at a friend's wedding. She was beautiful then, still is, if I'm being honest, with dark hair and green eyes that could make you forget your own name. She was working at a small advertising firm, ambitious and smart, the kind of woman who could light up a room just by walking into it. I was 30, she was 26, and we both thought we had the world figured out. For a long time, maybe we did. We bought the house on Maple Street when Ross was born, added the second story when Amelia came along 3 years later. Marta climbed the corporate ladder while I built my business from the ground up. We were partners, or at least I thought we were. The kids are grown now. Ross is 21, finishing his last year at State. Amelia is 18 and thinks she knows everything about everything, which I suppose is normal for her age. They both inherited their mother's looks and her talent for making me feel like I'm missing something obvious. Our town isn't much to look at from the outside. Millbrook used to be a manufacturing center back in the day, but most of those jobs moved overseas 20 years ago. Now it's the kind of place where everyone knows everyone else's business, where gossip travels faster than wildfire and lasts twice as long. The wealthy folks live up by the lake in their fancy houses, while the rest of us make do with modest homes and smaller dreams. Marta's world has been changing lately. Her firm landed some big accounts, and suddenly she's traveling more, working late, going to networking events and client dinners. She started dressing differently too, sharper suits, more expensive jewelry, the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you're moving up in the world. My world, on the other hand, has been shrinking. The shop is doing okay, but just okay. Insurance companies are always trying to squeeze us on repair costs, and customers expect miracles on impossible timelines. Some days I feel like I'm fighting just to stay in the same place. Maybe that's why I didn't see it coming, or maybe I just didn't want to see it. The barbecue broke up around 10, with the usual promises to get together soon that nobody really means. Marta helped clean up, chatting with the neighbors like nothing had happened. She has this talent for compartmentalizing, for acting like uncomfortable moments never occurred. "That was unnecessary," she said, as we loaded the dishwasher later. "What was unnecessary?" "You know what? That comment about fixing mistakes." I handed her a plate, watching her face in the kitchen light. "I was just responding to what you said." "I wasn't talking about our marriage, David. I was talking about career choices, life paths. You always assume everything is about you. Do I? I turned to face her fully. Because from where I was standing, it sounded like you were telling our friends that marrying me was something you regret. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. She sighed, the way she does when she thinks I'm being deliberately obtuse. You're being paranoid, and honestly, it's not attractive. Paranoid. That was a new one. Usually she went with stubborn or unreasonable. Maybe I am, I said. Or maybe I'm just paying attention. She didn't answer that. Just finished loading the dishes and went upstairs, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the lingering smell of barbecue smoke and the growing certainty that something in my life was about to change. I walked out to the back porch and sat in the old wooden chair I'd built when we first moved in. The night was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic and the occasional bark of a neighbor's dog. Stars were visible through the light pollution, faint but persistent. 22 years, 2 kids, a house, a business, a life built piece by piece. And now my wife was telling strangers she'd married too young, like I was some kind of mistake she'd made before she knew better. The thing about being married for more than 2 decades is that you develop a kind of radar for trouble. Little changes in routine, shifts in tone, the way someone avoids eye contact when they used to seek it out. I'd been ignoring those signals for months, maybe longer, telling myself I was imagining things. But tonight, sitting in the dark with the taste of disappointment in my mouth, I couldn't ignore them anymore. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong for a while, and I'd been too busy or too trusting or too stupid to see it. I finished my beer and went inside. Marta was already in bed, her back turned to my side, breathing in that careful rhythm people use when they're pretending to be asleep. I got ready for bed quietly, slipped under the covers, and lay there, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow I would go to the shop, fix whatever cars needed fixing, come home to dinner and small talk and the evening news. We would continue the routine we'd perfected over the years, the comfortable dance of a long marriage. But something had shifted tonight. Some line had been crossed, some truth had been spoken that couldn't be taken back. And as I finally drifted off to sleep, I found myself wondering what other truths might be hiding in the spaces between what we said and what we meant. I had no idea how much I was about to find out. 3 weeks later, I was under the hood of a 2018 Honda Civic when my world officially came apart. The car belonged to Mrs. Patterson, an elderly woman who brought her vehicle to me because her grandson had recommended my shop. Simple oil change and brake inspection, the kind of routine work that pays the bills. I was checking the brake fluid when my phone buzzed. Text message from Marta. Working late again. Don't wait up. The 3rd time this week, and it was only Wednesday. I wiped my hands on a shop rag and stared at the message. Working late had become Marta's favorite phrase lately, right alongside client dinner and team meeting. All perfectly reasonable explanations for why she was coming home after 9 most nights, why she was always checking her phone, why she'd started taking calls in the other room. Everything okay, Dave? I looked up to see my assistant, Jimmy Rodriguez. Wait, that name's not allowed. Let me call him Jimmy Walsh. Jimmy Walsh wiping his hands on a towel, concern written across his grease-stained face. Yeah, just the usual domestic bliss, I said, shoving the phone back in my pocket. Jimmy laughed. He was 25 and still optimistic about relationships, the way you can be when you haven't been married long enough to discover that people can become strangers while you're not looking. My wife says marriage is like a car, he said. You got to keep up with the maintenance or it breaks down. Smart woman. What's she think about when the other driver stops showing up for tune-ups? Maybe she's just busy, boss. Didn't you say her company landed some big accounts? Yeah, maybe. I slammed the hood of the Honda harder than necessary. Or maybe she's getting her maintenance done somewhere else. The words hung in the air between us, and I immediately regretted saying them. Jimmy looked uncomfortable, the way people do when someone shares more than they intended. I'd crossed a line from casual complaint into something darker. Sorry, kid. Forget I said that. No worries, boss. We all got our rough patches. But as I finished up with Mrs. Patterson's car, Jimmy's wife's analogy kept rattling around in my head. Marriage is like a car. When things start going wrong, there are usually warning signs before the engine seizes up completely. Strange noises, rough idling, parts that don't work the way they used to. Marta and I had been making strange noises for months. I locked up the shop around 6 and drove home through the familiar streets of Millbrook. Past the high school where both our kids had graduated, past the diner where Marta and I used to have breakfast on Sunday mornings, past the park where we'd taken Ross and Amelia when they were small. The house was dark when I pulled into the driveway. No surprise there. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and heated up leftover pizza, eating it standing at the kitchen counter while I sorted through the mail. Bills, advertisements, a postcard from my brother in Arizona, and Marta's credit card statement. I almost threw it in the pile with the rest of her mail without looking. We'd always kept our finances mostly separate. She handled her cards and accounts. I handled mine. We split the household expenses down the middle. It worked for us, or at least it had worked until recently. But something made me pause. Maybe it was the conversation at the barbecue, or the increasing frequency of her late nights, or just the general feeling that I was living with someone who'd become a stranger. Whatever it was, I opened the envelope. Most of the charges were normal. Grocery store, gas station, her favorite coffee shop downtown. But there were others that made me frown. Dinner at Romano's, an expensive Italian place across town. Charges at Victoria's Secret that I knew weren't for my benefit, since our romantic life had been about as exciting as a tax audit lately. And then I saw it. The Riverside Inn. Charged 3 times in the past month, always on days when she'd claimed to be working late. The Riverside Inn wasn't a place you went for business meetings. It was a mid-range hotel on the outskirts of town, the kind of place traveling salesmen stayed or where people went when they wanted privacy. The kind of place where you might take someone if you were having an affair. I set the statement down on the counter and stared at it, waiting for some innocent explanation to occur to me. Maybe she was planning a surprise party. Maybe she was meeting clients from out of town. Maybe there was some perfectly reasonable explanation that didn't involve my wife of 22 years stepping out on our marriage. But even as I tried to convince myself, I knew I was grasping at straws. The pieces were starting to fit together in a pattern I didn't want to see. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, the new clothes, and the growing distance between us. My phone buzzed. Another text from Marta. Going to be really late. Big presentation tomorrow. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "No problem. Good luck with the presentation." But instead of sending it, I deleted the words and wrote, "Which client?" The response took almost 10 minutes. New prospect. Confidential right now. Confidential. Right. I finished my beer and walked upstairs to our bedroom. Marta's laptop was on her dresser, closed but not locked away. She'd never been secretive about her computer before, always left it lying around, sometimes asked me to check her email when she was busy. I stood there for a full minute, staring at the silver laptop and fighting with myself. Going through your spouse's computer was a violation of trust, the kind of thing that changed a relationship even if you didn't find anything. But then again, if she was having an affair, the trust was already broken, wasn't it? I opened the laptop. It was password protected, which was new. Marta had never used a password before, claimed she could never remember them. I tried a few obvious choices: her birthday, the kids' names, our anniversary. Nothing worked. Then I tried Millbrook 2023, and the screen unlocked. Her email was open, and I scrolled through the recent messages. Work stuff, mostly. communications with clients, internal memos, the usual corporate nonsense. But buried in between the legitimate emails were messages that made my chest tighten. Can't wait to see you tonight, same place. B. Last night was incredible, you're amazing. B. Thinking about you. When can we get away for a whole weekend? B. B. Someone whose name started with B was writing to my wife like they were lovers. Someone who was meeting her at the same place. Someone who thought last night was incredible. Someone who wanted to spend a whole weekend with her. I scrolled back through the messages looking for more details and found them. References to the Riverside Inn, plans to meet after work, complaints about having to be secretive, wishes they could be open about their relationship. And then, I found the message that made everything clear. Your husband seems like a decent guy. I feel bad about this sometimes. But you deserve to be happy. And if he can't make you happy, maybe it's time to move on. See you Thursday at the usual place. Brent. Brent. I knew exactly who Brent was. Brent Morrison was Jennifer's younger brother, the golden boy who'd played football at State before a knee injury ended his dreams of going pro. Now he worked at a luxury car dealership downtown, selling BMWs and Mercedes to the kind of people who could afford them. He was handsome in that aging jock way, with the kind of easy confidence that came from being told you were special your whole life. He was also married to a sweet woman named Lisa, with 2 kids in middle school, and apparently he was sleeping with my wife. I closed the laptop and sat on the edge of the bed, trying to process what I'd just learned. 22 years of marriage, 2 kids, a life built together, and she was throwing it away for Brent Morrison. A guy who sold cars and probably still told stories about his high school football glory days. The rational part of my mind told me to confront her, to demand an explanation, to try to work things out like adults. We had history together, a family, shared investments in each other's lives. But the other part of my mind, the part that was growing stronger by the minute, had different ideas. The part that remembered her comment at the barbecue about marrying too young, about fixing mistakes. The part that was tired of being treated like an inconvenience in my own life. If Marta wanted to play games, maybe it was time she learned that I could play too. I went downstairs and poured myself a whiskey, then sat at the kitchen table with her credit card statement spread out in front of me. 3 visits to the Riverside Inn in the past month. 3 times she'd looked me in the eye and lied about where she was going. My phone buzzed with another text. Don't wait up. Love you. Love you. The casual way she signed off messages now, like it was just something you said, not I love you, or even love Marta. Just love you, typed quickly between meetings with her boyfriend. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, love you too. But as I hit send, I realized something had changed. The words felt hollow now, just sounds without meaning. Whatever love we'd had was fading away under the weight of lies, secret meetings, and the growing certainty that I'd become irrelevant in my own marriage. Marta came home at 11:30, moving quietly through the house like she was trying not to wake me. I heard her in the bathroom, brushing her teeth and going through her nighttime routine. When she slipped into bed beside me, she smelled like unfamiliar cologne mixed with her usual perfume. How was the presentation? I whispered. Good, she said. I think we'll get the account. Another lie, delivered so smoothly it might have been the truth. I lay there in the dark next to my wife, listening to her breathing gradually slow as she fell asleep, and made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her, wasn't going to beg her to choose me over Brent Morrison. I wasn't going to play the role of the wronged husband who discovers his wife's affair and falls apart. Instead, I was going to do something else entirely. I was going to make them both regret the day they decided to make me look like a fool. The next morning, Marta left for work at her usual time, kissing my cheek in that perfunctory way married people do when affection has become habit rather than feeling. She was wearing a new dress I hadn't seen before, something that probably cost more than most people make in a week. "Have a good day," she said, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror. "You too. Hope the new client works out." She paused for just a moment, and I caught something in her expression. Guilt, maybe, or just irritation that I was paying attention to details she'd rather I ignore. "It's still early stages," she said. "Nothing definite yet." Of course. These things take time. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and thought about my next move. I could hire a private investigator, gather evidence, file for divorce, and try to take her for everything she was worth. That was the conventional approach, the one most men in my situation would probably take. But I wasn't most men. I was a guy who'd spent 30 years fixing things that other people had broken, solving problems that seemed impossible, making something work when everyone else said it couldn't be done. And right now, I had a problem that needed a more creative solution. I called Jimmy and told him I'd be in late, then drove across town to Morrison Luxury Motors. The dealership was one of those gleaming glass and chrome affairs, all polished surfaces and expensive cars arranged like jewelry in a display case. The kind of place where they served you coffee in actual china cups while you pretended you could afford a $60,000 sedan. Brent was easy to spot. He was standing next to a silver BMW, gesturing enthusiastically while a middle-aged couple nodded and smiled. Still handsome at 42, with the kind of tan you get from playing golf instead of working with your hands. His suit probably cost more than I made in a month. I parked across the street and watched him work. He had that salesman's charm, the ability to make people feel like they were his best friends while he separated them from their money. I could see why Marta might be attracted to him. He represented everything I wasn't. Smooth where I was rough, polished where I was practical. But watching him laugh at his own jokes and slap the potential customer on the back, I also saw something else. Brent Morrison was exactly the kind of guy who would sleep with another man's wife and feel good about it, who would convince himself he was doing her a favor by showing her what she was missing. The kind of guy who needed to be taught a lesson. I waited until his customers left, then walked across the street and into the showroom. Brent saw me coming, and his face lit up with that practiced salesman's smile. "Dave Mitchell, how are you, buddy? Haven't seen you at the gym lately." "Been busy at the shop. You know how it is." "Absolutely. Hey, you should check out this new 3 Series we just got in. Perfect for a successful business owner like yourself." He led me over to a blue sedan, running his hand along the hood like he was caressing a lover. The irony wasn't lost on me. "Beautiful car," I said. "Must be nice, selling luxury items to people who can afford them. It has its perks." His smile widened. "Of course, not everyone appreciates the finer things in life. Some people are content with simpler pleasures." The way he said it, with just a hint of condescension, made my jaw clench, but I kept my expression neutral. True, some people know what they want and go after it, regardless of the consequences. "Exactly." He slapped me on the shoulder. "You get it, Dave. Life's too short to settle for less than you deserve." Couldn't agree more. We chatted for a few more minutes about nothing in particular, and I let him give me his sales pitch about the BMW's features and financing options. All the while, I was studying him, learning his patterns, figuring out what made him tick. When I finally left, I had what I needed. Not evidence for a divorce lawyer, but something more valuable. Insight into my enemy's weaknesses. That evening, I drove to the Riverside Inn. It was exactly what I'd expected. A 2-story building with exterior entrances to each room, the kind of place where you could come and go without walking through a lobby. Perfect for people who valued discretion. I parked where I could see the entrance and waited. At 6:30, Brent's silver BMW pulled into the lot. He got out, looked around nervously, then walked to room 237 and knocked. The door opened, and I caught a glimpse of Marta before it closed behind him. So there it was. Confirmation of what I'd already known, but somehow seeing it with my own eyes made it more real. My wife was in that room with another man, probably undressing him at that very moment, doing things with him that she hadn't done with me in months. I sat there for a few minutes, waiting to feel something. Anger, heartbreak, the urge to kick down the door and confront them both. But what I actually felt was something colder and more useful. Clarity. This wasn't about love anymore. It was about respect, about not letting people treat you like a fool and get away with it. Marta and Brent thought they were smarter than me, thought they could conduct their affair right under my nose while I played the oblivious husband. Time to show them how wrong they were. I drove to the hardware store and bought a few items, nothing dramatic, just some basic supplies that any homeowner might need. Then I went home and waited. Marta came in around 9:30, full of apologies about the late meeting and how demanding the new client was being. She'd showered at the hotel, I realized, because her hair was still slightly damp and she smelled like the cheap soap they provide at places like the Riverside Inn. "How was your day?" she asked, settling onto the couch next to me. "Productive. Finished the Henderson job, started on that Camaro restoration I've been putting off." "That's nice." She was scrolling through her phone as she talked, not really listening. "I might have to work late again tomorrow. This client is really pushing for a fast turnaround." "Of course they are. These demanding clients, always wanting immediate results." She looked up at me, and for a moment I thought she might have caught the edge in my voice, but then her phone buzzed with a text message and her attention shifted. "I'm going to take a bath," she said, standing up. "It's been a long day." "I bet it has." After she went upstairs, I sat in the living room and planned my next move. I wasn't going to do anything illegal or dangerous. I wasn't that kind of person. But there were other ways to make someone's life uncomfortable, other ways to send a message. The next morning, after Marta left for her fake meeting, I drove back to Morrison Luxury Motors. The lot was busy with customers and salespeople, everyone focused on making deals and moving inventory. Perfect. I walked around to the back of the building where the employees parked their personal vehicles. Brent's BMW was easy to spot, parked in a space marked Employee of the Month. Even his parking spot was pretentious. I looked around to make sure no one was watching, then knelt down next to the car's front tire. The valve stem cap came off easily, and I pressed the small tool I'd bought at the hardware store against the valve. Air hissed out steadily, and within a few minutes the tire was flat. I moved to the rear tire on the same side and repeated the process. Not slashed tires, nothing that would look like vandalism. Just two flats that could have been caused by anything. Road debris, faulty valves, bad luck. But Brent would know better. He'd remember our conversation yesterday, the way I'd talked about people going after what they wanted, regardless of consequences. He'd understand that this was a message. I was walking back to my truck when I heard someone call my name. "Dave? Dave Mitchell?" I turned to see Lisa Morrison walking toward me across the parking lot. Brent's wife, carrying shopping bags and looking surprised to see me. "Lisa, hi. How are you doing?" "Good, thanks. What brings you to Brent's work?" For a moment, I was tempted to tell her everything. To explain that her husband was having an affair with my wife, that they'd been meeting at hotels and exchanging love messages like teenagers. The words were right there, ready to spill out and destroy both their lives in one conversation. But that would have been too easy, too quick, and it would have made me look like the bitter husband who couldn't handle being cheated on. "Just looking at cars," I said instead, thinking about upgrading the truck. "Oh, that's exciting. Brent loves helping people find the perfect vehicle. He's so passionate about cars." "I'm sure he is. He seems like the type who's passionate about a lot of things." She smiled, missing the double meaning entirely. "He really is. We're so lucky to have found each other." Lucky. I almost laughed at that. "Well, I should let you go," I said. "Tell Brent I said hello." "I will. And Dave? You should really consider that BMW he was showing you. You deserve something nice." As I drove away, I thought about Lisa's words. You deserve something nice. She was right, of course. I did deserve something nice. I deserved a wife who didn't lie to me, a marriage built on honesty instead of deception, a life where I wasn't constantly wondering what was being hidden from me. Since I wasn't going to get any of those things, I'd have to settle for something else. I'd have to settle for revenge. That afternoon, I got a call from Jimmy at the shop. Boss, you got a visitor here. Guy named Brent Morrison says he knows you. I smiled. That had been faster than I'd expected. Send him back to the office, Jimmy. I'll be right there. When I walked into my office, Brent was pacing back and forth like a caged animal. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and he looked like he'd been having a very bad day. Dave, thank God you're here. I've got a problem. What kind of problem? Someone messed with my car. 2 flat tires, right there in the employee parking lot. Had to call AAA and everything. Cost me 2 sales this morning while I was dealing with it. I sat down behind my desk and leaned back in my chair. That's terrible. Any idea who might have done it? That's what I was hoping you could help me figure out. He stopped pacing and looked at me directly. You work on cars all day. You hear things. Has anyone been asking about me lately? Anyone seem angry or upset? Can't think of anyone off the top of my head. You having problems with someone? Not that I know of. I mean, you make enemies in sales. People who feel like you didn't give them a good enough deal or whatever. But this feels personal. Personal how? He ran a hand through his hair, messing up his carefully styled appearance. I don't know. Like someone's trying to send me a message. What kind of message? That's what I can't figure out. Look, Dave, we've known each other for years. If someone had a problem with me, you'd tell me, right? I met his eyes and held his gaze for a long moment. Of course, Brent. We're friends. The word friends seemed to relax him a little. He straightened his tie and tried to regain some of his usual confidence. Good. I knew I could count on you. If you hear anything at all, will you let me know? Absolutely. In the meantime, you might want to be more careful about where you park, and maybe pay attention to who you might be offending. Something flickered across his face. Uncertainty, maybe even a little fear. What do you mean? Nothing specific. Just that sometimes people do things that have consequences they don't expect. Actions have reactions, you know? Right. Sure. He was backing toward the door now, eager to leave. Thanks for listening, Dave. I appreciate it. Anytime, buddy. That's what friends are for. After he left, I sat in my office and allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. Round 1 was mine. Brent was rattled, looking over his shoulder, wondering who was targeting him and why. But this was just the beginning. I had bigger plans for Mr. Morrison and my lying wife. Plans that would make flat tires look like a friendly greeting card. They wanted to play games behind my back? Fine. Let's see how they liked playing games when I was setting the rules. The beauty of a small town like Millbrook is that everyone knows everyone else's business. What people don't realize is that you can use that network of gossip and connection as a weapon, if you're smart about it. Over the next week, I began a careful campaign of social sabotage. Nothing dramatic or obvious, just small comments dropped in the right ears at the right times. At the diner where I grabbed lunch most days, I mentioned to Sally the waitress that I'd seen Brent Morrison's car at the Riverside Inn several times lately. Probably meeting clients, I said with a shrug, though it seems like an odd place for business meetings. Sally's eyes lit up with interest. She was the town's unofficial information hub, and a comment like that would spread through Millbrook faster than a summer wildfire. At the auto parts store, I ran into Tom Bradley, who coached Little League with Brent. Funny thing, I told Tom while we waited in line. My wife mentioned seeing Brent having dinner at Romano's with some woman who wasn't Lisa. Probably a client or something, but you know how people talk. Tom frowned. Romano's is pretty expensive for a business dinner. That's what I thought. But hey, Maybe car sales are better than I realized. Each conversation was carefully crafted to sound innocent while planting seeds of doubt. I never accused anyone of anything directly, never said anything that could be traced back to me as malicious gossip. I just shared observations and let other people draw their own conclusions. Meanwhile, I kept up my surveillance of Marta and Brent's routine. They met at the Riverside Inn twice more that week, always between 6 and 8 in the evening. Marta's lies were becoming more elaborate. Client dinners, team meetings, late presentations. She was getting better at deception, which somehow made it worse. On Friday night, she announced she was going to a work conference the following weekend. In Chicago, she said, not looking up from her phone. Big industry event. Networking opportunities. Sounds important. Which hotel? The Marriott downtown. I'll text you the details. She never texted me the details. Instead, I followed her on Saturday morning and watched her meet Brent at a romantic bed and breakfast about an hour outside of town. They checked in together, laughing and holding hands like honeymooners. That's when I decided it was time to escalate. I drove back to Millbrook and spent the afternoon making preparations. First stop was the office supply store, where I bought a cheap printer and some basic materials. Then the library, where I used their computer to create an anonymous email account. By Sunday evening, I had everything ready. The photos were grainy but clear enough. Marta and Brent entering the bed and breakfast together, Brent's hand on her back as they walked to their room, the two of them kissing in the parking lot before they left. I printed dozens of copies, then began my distribution campaign. The first batch went to Marta's co-workers. I had their email addresses from her laptop, and I sent each of them an anonymous message with the subject line, "Thought you should know." The message was brief. "Your colleague Marta Mitchell is having an affair with Brent Morrison. Thought someone should know what kind of person she really is." The second batch went to Brent's workplace. I'd gotten the staff directory from their website, and I sent similar messages to his manager, his co-workers, and the dealership's owner. The third batch was the most satisfying. I printed physical copies and mailed them to Lisa Morrison, along with a note. "Your husband is cheating on you. I thought you deserved to know the truth." Then I sat back and waited for the explosion. It didn't take long. Monday morning, my phone started ringing before I even got to the shop. First call was from Ross, my son. "Dad, what the heck is going on? Mom called me crying, saying someone's spreading lies about her at work." "What kind of lies?" "She wouldn't say exactly, just that someone's trying to ruin her reputation. Are you guys having problems?" I thought about how to answer that. "Your mother and I are working through some issues, son. But I wouldn't worry about it. These things have a way of sorting themselves out. Should I come home? I can drive down this afternoon." "No need for that. Focus on your studies. This is between your mother and me." The second call was from Amelia, who was less diplomatic. "Dad, Mom says you're behind some kind of harassment campaign against her. Please tell me that's not true." "Your mother says a lot of things lately that aren't entirely accurate." "So you are behind it?" "I'm behind wanting the truth to come out. If that makes me the bad guy, so be it." "Dad," she sighed, sounding older than her 18 years. "This isn't like you. What's really going on?" "Ask your mother. She's the one with all the answers these days." The third call was the one I'd been waiting for. Marta, calling from work, her voice tight with barely controlled fury. "We need to talk. Tonight, as soon as I get home." "Looking forward to it." "Don't play games with me, David. I know what you did." "Do you?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like I just helped some people learn the truth about what's been going on behind their backs. You're destroying my career, my reputation, everything I've worked for." "Funny. I thought you were doing that all by yourself." She hung up without another word. The fourth call came an hour later. Brent, and he sounded even worse than Marta. "You son of a—" He caught himself, probably remembering he was calling my place of business. "We need to talk, right now." I'm listening. Not on the phone. Meet me at Murphy's bar in an hour. Can't do it, Brent. I'm working. You know, that thing some of us do to support our families? This isn't over, Mitchell. You're right about that. Murphy's bar was a dive on the wrong side of town, the kind of place where people went to drink away their problems and pretend their lives weren't falling apart. I'd never been there before, but it seemed appropriate for the conversation I was about to have. Brent was waiting in a corner booth, looking like he'd aged 5 years since I'd seen him at the dealership. His usual polish was gone, replaced by the haggard appearance of a man whose world was crumbling. "Sit down," he said when he saw me. I slid into the booth across from him. "You look terrible, Brent. Rough day?" "Cut the act. We both know why I'm here." "Do we? Because I'm having trouble keeping up with all the drama lately." He leaned forward, his voice low and dangerous. "You sent those pictures. You ruined my marriage, my job, my entire life. For what? Because you can't handle the fact that your wife found someone better?" "Someone better?" I laughed, loud enough to draw stares from the other patrons. "You sell cars, Brent. You're not exactly a prize catch." His face flushed red. "At least I know how to make a woman happy. When's the last time Marta smiled when you walked into a room?" The comment hit home, but I didn't let it show. "When's the last time you told your wife where you were spending your evenings?" "Lisa and I." "That's complicated." "I bet it is, especially now that she knows what kind of man she married." He was gripping his beer bottle so tight his knuckles were white. "You want to settle this like men? Fine, let's go outside." "And what, have a fist fight in the parking lot? We're not in high school anymore, Brent, though I suppose that's about when you peaked." "You think you're so smart. You think you've won something here, but all you've done is guarantee that Marta will never come back to you. She hates you now, really hates you." "Good. Hate is honest. It's more than I've gotten from her in months." He stared at me across the table, and I could see him trying to figure out his next move. Finally, he shook his head. "You're insane. You know that? You've destroyed everything. Your marriage, my marriage, both our reputations, and for what? Some kind of twisted revenge?" "I prefer to think of it as truth-telling. People deserve to know who they're really dealing with." "This isn't over." "You keep saying that, but from where I'm sitting it looks pretty over. Your wife kicked you out, didn't she? And I heard your boss wasn't too happy about the scandal affecting the dealership's reputation." His silence confirmed what I'd suspected. The fallout was even worse than I'd hoped. "Here's what's going to happen, Brent. You're going to stay away from my wife. You're going to stop calling her, stop meeting her, stop whatever pathetic relationship you think you have. Because if you don't, I'll make what happened this week look like a friendly warning." "You can't threaten me." "I'm not threatening you. I'm explaining reality. This is a small town, and I know a lot of people. People who trust me, who've known me for years. If I decide to really destroy your life, I can do it. The only reason I haven't is because I'm not that kind of person." I stood up to leave, then turned back. Yet. The drive home gave me time to think about what I'd just done. A week ago, I'd been a faithful husband and small business owner, someone who minded his own business and tried to treat people fairly. Now I was blackmailing my wife's lover and threatening to destroy his life. The scary part wasn't that I'd changed so much. The scary part was how easy it had been. When I got home, Marta's car was in the driveway. The confrontation I'd been expecting all day was finally here. I found her in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a glass of wine and a stack of papers in front of her. She looked up when I walked in, and her expression was colder than I'd ever seen it. "Divorce papers," she said, gesturing to the stack. "I had them drawn up this afternoon." That was fast. "I want you out of this house by the end of the week. You can have your business and your truck and whatever other junk you think you need. Everything else stays with me." I poured myself a whiskey and sat down across from her. "Interesting negotiating position. What makes you think you have that kind of leverage?" "Because I'm the victim here, David. You've been stalking me, harassing my friends and coworkers, interfering with my career. Any judge in the country would side with me. Would they? Even after they see the evidence of your affair? What affair? You have some grainy photos of me with a friend. That doesn't prove anything. I had to admire her nerve. Even caught red-handed, she was still trying to lie her way out of it. A friend you've been meeting at hotels, a friend you've been exchanging love messages with, a friend whose wife just filed for divorce because of those same grainy photos. That got a reaction. Her composure slipped for just a moment, and I saw something that might have been fear. Lisa filed for divorce? This afternoon, from what I heard. Apparently, she wasn't as understanding about your friendship as you hoped she'd be. Marta's face went pale. You've destroyed everything. My job, my relationship with Brent, our family. Are you happy now? Getting there. She stared at me like I was a stranger. What happened to you? The man I married would never have done something like this. The man you married trusted you. The man you married believed in our partnership, our commitment to each other. You want to know what happened to him? You happened to him. So this is all my fault? You made choices, Marta. Actions have consequences. I'm just making sure those consequences are appropriate to the actions. She was quiet for a long moment, sipping her wine and staring at the divorce papers. It doesn't have to be like this, she said finally. We could handle this quietly like adults. Divide everything fairly, keep the kids out of it, move on with our lives. Could we? Because it seems to me like you already moved on with your life. You just forgot to mention it to me. I never meant for it to happen. Brent and I, it just developed naturally. We connected in a way that you and I haven't in years. Connected. Is that what we're calling it? Don't be crude. I'm being honest. Something you might want to try sometime. She finished her wine and stood up. I'm going to stay at my sister's tonight. When I come back tomorrow, I want you gone. Not happening. Excuse me? This is my house too. I've been paying the mortgage for 15 years. If you want me out, you'll have to go through the courts like everyone else. Fine. We'll see what a judge thinks about your behavior. We will. And while we're at it, we'll see what they think about yours. After she left, I sat in the kitchen with my whiskey and the divorce papers. 22 years of marriage, reduced to a stack of legal documents and a list of assets to be divided. But I wasn't ready to give up yet. Marta thought she could destroy our family and walk away with half of everything I'd worked for, while I played the role of the bitter ex-husband who couldn't handle being replaced. She was wrong about that. I was just getting started. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in small-town warfare. Marta hired a lawyer and filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and asking for half of everything we owned. Her attorney was some hotshot from the city who specialized in high-asset divorces, the kind of guy who wore $1,000 suits and charged by the minute. My lawyer was Bob Henderson, a local guy who'd handled my business incorporation and various contracts over the years. He wasn't flashy, but he was thorough, and he knew everyone in town, which turned out to be more valuable than expensive suits. She's claiming emotional distress, Bob told me during our first meeting. Says you've been harassing her and her associates, interfering with her career, causing her psychological trauma. What about her affair? She denies it, says you fabricated evidence to make her look bad. He leaned back in his chair and studied me over his glasses. Did you fabricate evidence, Dave? Every photo is real. Every email is authentic. I didn't make up anything. But you did distribute private information without her consent. You did interfere with her workplace relationships. A judge might see that as harassment, regardless of your motivations. So she gets to cheat on me, and I get punished for exposing it? Welcome to modern divorce law. The question is, what do you want to accomplish here? Do you want to punish her, or do you want to protect your assets and move on with your life? I thought about that for a moment. Can I do both? Bob smiled. That's what I was hoping you'd say. While the lawyers battled over paperwork, I continued my campaign of social pressure. The beauty of living in a small town is that reputation matters more than money, and once people start talking about you, the conversation takes on a life of its own. Marta's affair was now common knowledge throughout Millbrook. The story had grown in the telling, as stories do, until she and Brent were practically running a brothel instead of just meeting at cheap hotels. Her co-workers avoided her, clients started requesting different account managers, and her boss began making noises about how the scandal was affecting the firm's reputation. Brent had it even worse. His wife Lisa had not only filed for divorce, but had also shared the evidence with everyone she knew. His sales numbers plummeted as customers decided they didn't want to buy cars from a man who couldn't be trusted with his own marriage. The dealership owner, a family man who prided himself on running a respectable business, was looking for reasons to fire him. But the real stroke of genius came from an unexpected source. I was having lunch at the diner when Sally the waitress slid into the booth across from me, her eyes bright with gossip. "Dave, honey, you didn't hear this from me, but there's something you should know about your wife's friend Tanya." Tanya Williams had been Marta's best friend since college. She worked in human resources at Marta's firm and had always been polite to me, though I'd never felt like she particularly liked me. She was one of those women who seemed to view marriage as a temporary arrangement and husbands as necessary evils. "What about Tanya?" "Well, you know how she's been so supportive of Marta through all this drama? Taking her side, telling everyone what a victim she is?" "Yeah, so?" Sally leaned forward conspiratorially. "Turns out she's got her own reasons for wanting to see your marriage end. My cousin works at the firm, and she says Tanya's been after Marta's job for years. Now that Marta's reputation is damaged, guess who's being considered for promotion?" That was interesting. "You think Tanya encouraged the affair?" "I think Tanya's a lot smarter than people give her credit for, and I think she's been playing a longer game than anyone realized." After lunch, I drove home and did some research. Marta's laptop was still password protected, but she'd been careless about logging out of her email on our shared desktop computer. It took me about 10 minutes to find what I was looking for. Email exchanges between Marta and Tanya going back months, long before the affair started. Tanya complaining about being passed over for promotions, suggesting that Marta's marriage was holding her back, encouraging her to explore her options and think about what she really wanted from life. And then, more recently, messages where Tanya was actively encouraging the relationship with Brent. "You deserve to be happy. David doesn't appreciate what he has. Maybe it's time to make some changes." Tanya hadn't just known about the affair, she'd helped orchestrate it. She'd manipulated her best friend into destroying her marriage, knowing it would damage Marta's reputation and create an opportunity for her own advancement. I printed out the most damaging emails and added them to my growing file of evidence. Then I made a phone call. "Marta, it's me. We need to talk." I thought I made it clear that all communication should go through our lawyers. "This is about Tanya. I think you need to know what your best friend has really been up to." There was a long pause. "What are you talking about?" "Meet me at Murphy's bar in an hour. Come alone, and bring Tanya with you." "David, I'm not playing your games anymore." "This isn't a game. This is about the person who's been manipulating both of us from the beginning. If you want to know who your real enemy is, you'll be there." Another pause. "Fine, 1 hour. But this better not be some kind of ambush. The only person getting ambushed tonight is the one who deserves it." Murphy's bar was busier than it had been during my confrontation with Brent, but I found a quiet corner booth where we could talk without being overheard. Marta arrived first, looking tired and wary. She'd lost weight over the past few weeks, and there were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. "You look terrible," I said as she sat down. "Thanks. You're not exactly glowing yourself." It was true. The stress of the divorce proceedings and the constant warfare had taken its toll on both of us. We looked like what we were, Two people who'd spent 22 years building a life together and were now tearing it apart piece by piece. "Where's Tanya?" "She's coming." She wanted to make sure this wasn't some kind of trap. Smart woman. Smarter than either of us realized. Tanya arrived a few minutes later, her expression carefully neutral. She was a small woman with sharp features and intelligent eyes, the kind of person who noticed everything and revealed nothing. "David, this is unexpected." "Is it? Because I think you've been expecting this conversation for a while now." She slid into the booth next to Marta, and I noticed how she positioned herself, close enough to show solidarity, but angled so she could watch both of us at the same time. "I'm not sure what you mean." I pulled out the printed emails and spread them on the table. "I think you know exactly what I mean." Marta picked up the first page and started reading. I watched her face change as she processed what she was seeing, confusion, then understanding, then something that looked like betrayal. "Tanya, what is this?" "It's your best friend manipulating you into destroying your marriage so she could advance her own career," I said. "She's been playing you for months, maybe years." Tanya's composure finally cracked. "That's not... You're taking those messages out of context." "Am I? Because it looks pretty clear from here. You encouraged Marta to have an affair, knowing it would damage her reputation at work. You've been positioning yourself as the reliable alternative while she dealt with the scandal. And now, you're being considered for the promotion that should have been hers." Marta was reading through more of the emails, her face growing paler with each page. "You told me David was holding me back. You said I deserved better." "You do deserve better," Tanya said, but her voice lacked conviction now. "Better than my husband? Or better than being manipulated by someone I thought was my friend?" "Marta, you're not thinking clearly. David is trying to drive a wedge between us." "No," I said. "You already did that. I'm just making sure she sees it." The silence stretched between us as Marta continued reading. When she finally looked up, there were tears in her eyes. "How long?" she asked Tanya. "How long have you been planning this?" "It wasn't planned, I could see that you weren't happy. I thought if you realized what else was out there. You thought if you could get me to wreck my marriage and my reputation, you could take my job." "That's not how it was." "Then how was it?" Tanya looked between us, realizing that her carefully constructed manipulation was falling apart. "You were miserable, Marta. Both of you were. I just helped you see what was already true." "By encouraging me to have an affair with a married man? By convincing me to lie to my husband and destroy my family?" "You made your own choices. Based on advice from someone I trusted, someone who was supposed to be my friend." I leaned back and watched the confrontation unfold. This was better than anything I could have planned. Marta was finally seeing Tanya for what she really was, and the betrayal in her voice was genuine. "The affair was real," I said quietly. "Your feelings for Brent, the problems in our marriage, the distance between us. That was all real. But the push to act on those feelings, the encouragement to blow up your life instead of trying to fix it, that came from someone who had her own agenda." Marta turned to look at me, and for the first time in months, I saw something other than anger or contempt in her eyes. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we both got played. You by someone you thought was your friend, me by someone I thought was my wife. The question is, what do we do about it?" Tanya stood up abruptly. "I don't have to listen to this. Marta, you know who I am. You know I care about you." "Do I? Because right now, I'm not sure I know anything." "Fine, figure it out yourself. But don't come crying to me when you realize David is still the same boring, limited man he's always been." She stormed out of the bar, leaving Marta and me alone for the first time in weeks. "I feel like an idiot," Marta said finally. "Join the club. I've been feeling like an idiot for months. Not just about Tanya, about everything. About Brent, about the affair, about throwing away 22 years for… what? A few exciting months with someone who turned out to be just as shallow as everyone said he was? Brent's not the real problem. He's just a symptom. Of what? Of us not talking to each other anymore. Of us becoming strangers who happen to share a house and a bank account. She was quiet for a long time, staring at the emails scattered across the table. Do you think we can fix this? I don't know. Do you want to? I don't know either, but I think I'd like to try. I looked at my wife across the table, really looked at her, maybe for the first time in years. She was older than when we'd met, tired from the stress of the past few weeks, but she was still the woman I'd fallen in love with, still the person I'd chosen to build a life with. It won't be easy, I said. There's a lot of damage to undo, a lot of trust to rebuild. I know. And David? I'm sorry. Not just about the affair, but about all of it. About shutting you out. About making you feel like you didn't matter. About letting other people influence decisions that should have been ours to make. I'm sorry too. About the photos. About the public humiliation. About turning our private problems into a town-wide spectacle. We're quite a pair, aren't we? We always were. We sat there for a while longer, not talking, just processing everything that had happened. The bar was getting busier around us, but we were in our own bubble, two people who'd spent months tearing each other apart and were now trying to figure out if there was anything left to salvage. What happens now? Marta asked. Now we go home. We call off the lawyers. We start over, if that's what we both want. And Tanya? Tanya made her choices. She'll have to live with the consequences. And Brent? I thought about that. Brent's not our problem anymore. He's got his own mess to clean up. We left the bar together, walking out into the cool evening air. For the first time in months, we were on the same side of something. It wasn't a happy ending. There was too much damage for that, too many things that would need to be worked through. But it was a beginning, a chance to rebuild something that had been worth building in the first place. As we drove home in separate cars, I thought about the past few weeks and what they'd taught me, about the power of secrets and lies to destroy relationships, about the danger of letting other people make decisions about your life, about the difference between revenge and justice. Most of all, I thought about the difference between winning and actually getting what you want. I'd won the war against Brent and Tanya, but what I really wanted was my marriage back. Maybe, if we were both willing to work for it, I could have that too. The house was dark when we pulled into the driveway, but it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like a place where two people might be able to start over if they were brave enough to try. We walked to the front door together, and for the first time in months, Marta waited for me to unlock it. Ready? I asked. Ready? She said. And we went inside to begin the long process of rebuilding what we'd almost destroyed.